wiped the grease from her hands, and studied the power converter in front of her. The alien merchant's stall was crowded with parts from a dozen different species, most of which she didn't recognize. But the converter was universal enough. It would work for the cargo ship she served on as an engineer. "How much?" she asked the six-limbed vendor. The creature's translator crackled. 40 credits. Frowned. That was twice what it should cost, but this was Epsilon 7. Everything was overpriced at the trade station. She reached for her credit chip when a heavy hand grabbed her shoulder. "This one," a rough voice said. Spun around. A massive reptilian alien stood behind her, easily 7 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes. 2 more stood behind him, blocking her path. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Excuse me," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You're coming with us," the reptilian said. His translator made his words sound flat and emotionless. Jerked away from his grip. "I don't think so." The alien moved faster than she expected. His hand shot out and grabbed her arm, squeezing hard enough to make her gasp. Didn't think. She drove her knee up into what she hoped was a vulnerable spot. The alien grunted and loosened his grip. She ran. The market erupted into chaos as she pushed through the crowd. Aliens scattered, some shouting in languages her translator couldn't process fast enough. Could hear heavy footsteps behind her. She ducked under a stall and came up on the other side, her engineering instincts kicking in. She grabbed a heavy wrench from a tool display and swung it hard. The wrench connected with one of the pursuing aliens. There was a satisfying crack, and the creature went down, clutching its face. Green blood oozed between its fingers. Someone shouted. She turned and saw her, running toward her from the far end of the market. Relief flooded through her, but it was short-lived. The first alien raised some kind of weapon. Had never seen a stun gun before, but she recognized the danger. She tried to dodge. The weapon fired with a soft whine and electricity coursed through her body. Every muscle locked up. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. The wrench fell from her numb fingers as she collapsed. The last thing she saw was horrified face as he fought through the crowd. Then everything went black. Reached the spot where had fallen, but she was already gone. One of the reptilian aliens was dragging her unconscious body toward a side corridor. He tried to follow, but station security stepped in front of him. "Move," demanded. "Stand down, citizen," the security officer said. It was a gray-skinned humanoid with too many eyes. "This is a diplomatic matter." "Diplomatic? They just kidnapped my friend." "They have immunity under treaty law," the officer said. "We cannot interfere." Wanted to punch the officer, but that wouldn't help. Instead, he pulled out his communicator and started recording. He caught the tail end of a ship designation on one of the aliens' uniforms before they disappeared around a corner. It wasn't much, but it was something. He ran back through the station to the docking bay where their merchant vessel was berthed. Captain was doing inventory when burst through the airlock. "They took her," gasped. "They took." His weathered face went hard. He was an older man, a veteran of Earth's early space exploration. "Who?" "Reptilian aliens," the security officer called them. "They stunned her and dragged her away. Station security won't help." Was already moving to the ship's communication console. "Did you get anything? Ship ID, anything?" "Partial designation," said, pulling up his recording. "And I got footage of their faces." "Good man." His fingers flew over the console. "I'm sending a distress call to the nearest human vessel and Earth Command." "Will it matter?" asked. "We've only been out here for 8 months. We're nobody to these aliens." Looked at him with something like pity. "You're young. You don't remember how humans respond to things like this. We've been fighting wars over single prisoners since ancient times. It's in our blood." He finished typing and hovered his finger over the send button. "This is going to start something. You know that, right?" Thought about her laugh when she fixed something everyone else said was broken. about how she taught him to play cards during long jumps between systems, about how she'd been terrified during their first alien contact but had hidden it behind jokes and smiles. "She's one of us," said simply, nodded and hit the button. The message compressed and shot out across multiple channels, bouncing through relay stations toward Earth and every human ship in range. "Now what?" asked. "Now we wait," said, "and we hope those aliens don't know what they just did." Across the station, loaded his catch into his ship's holding cell. The human female was small, but she'd fought better than expected. 2 of his crew were injured. That was unusual for primitives. Still, she'd sell well. Humans were new to the galaxy, exotic, some collector would pay a premium. He didn't know that the message was already spreading. He didn't know that Earth's Unified Defense Command was receiving footage of the abduction. He didn't know that in homes and ships and colonies across human space, people were seeing face and learning what had happened. And he definitely didn't know that he just made the worst mistake of his life. The countdown had begun. Admiral stood in the command center of Earth's Unified Defense Headquarters, watching the message play for the 3rd time. The footage was shaky, recorded on a personal communicator but clear enough. A young woman fighting for her life. Reptilian aliens dragging her unconscious body away. Station security refusing to help. "How long ago?" he asked. 14 hours, sir," his aide replied. "The merchant vessel sent it through every channel they could access." Was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and scars from the resource wars. He'd commanded fleets before humanity ever left the solar system. He'd seen war, famine, and loss, but something about this made his blood run cold. Not fear, anger. "Get me everything we have on the collective," he said quietly. The screens around him filled with data. There were slavers, operating in 14 systems under the protection of larger empires. They'd been abducting primitive species for over a century. Millions of beings sold into servitude, and the Galactic Council did nothing. "Sir, the Council is hailing us," another officer said. Turned to the communication screen. A collection of alien faces appeared, representing the major powers of the galaxy. The lead counselor was a being that looked like a floating jellyfish with too many tentacles. "Admiral," the counselor said through the translator, "we understand you've received concerning news about one of your citizens." "Concerning," his voice was ice, "that's what you call kidnapping. We appreciate your distress, but we must urge restraint. They operate under diplomatic protections. Any action against them could destabilize regional politics." Diplomatic protections for slavers. "We understand humans are new to galactic society," another counselor chimed in. "But you must understand that these matters are complex. One individual cannot." "Stop talking," interrupted. The counselors fell silent, surprised. "You're going to listen now. You have 48 hours to get our citizen back, unharmed. After that, we're coming for her ourselves." "Admiral, please be reasonable." 48 hours, cut the transmission. His aide looked nervous. "Sir, the Council represents over 400 species. If we make enemies—" "I don't care if it's 4,000, said. "We're not leaving one of ours in a slaver's cage." He pulled up the communication system and began recording. "This is Admiral of Earth's Unified Defense Command. All vessels, all colonies, all defense stations. We have a citizen in hostile hands. I'm authorizing code retrieval. All available assets are to converge on space. Rules of engagement. Anyone who gets between us and our people is a hostile target." He sent the message. Across human space, the response was immediate. On Mars colony, the defense fleet began spinning up their drives. On the mining stations of the belt, armed freighters changed course. On the colony world of New Sol, militia groups mobilized. On every ship in every settlement, humans heard the call and answered. This wasn't ordered by command. This was something deeper, something primal. In the officers' mess of the warship Thunder, Captain Bin watched the footage with her crew. The young engineer's face as she fought, the moment she fell. "How many ships do we have nearby?" she asked. 16 within 2 jumps, Captain, her navigator said. "Get them all, we're going hunting." On the civilian transport Morning Star, the crew voted. They were haulers, not soldiers. They carried medicine and food, not weapons. But when the captain asked who wanted to help, every hand went up. They mounted mining lasers to their hull and plotted a course. Intelligence officer sat in a dark room filled with screens, his fingers dancing across holographic keyboards. He was tapped into galactic communication networks, something that was technically illegal. He didn't care. Within hours, he had locations of 17 facilities, shipping routes, supply chains, command structures. He sent it all to Admiral. In a quiet bar on Europa Station, an alien merchant named watched the news feeds with growing horror. He'd been trading with humans for 6 months. He liked them. They were loud and passionate and paid on time. Now he watched as they mobilized for war. He sent a message to his friend on Earth. "Do you know what you're doing? They have powerful backers. The Empire has promised them protection. You're talking about fighting half the galaxy over one person." The response came back within minutes. "Then we'll make friends with our guns." Closed his communicator and ordered another drink. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humans. By the 30-hour mark, the fleet was taking shape. 127 warships, mostly frigates and destroyers. Earth's navy was young, built for system defense, not power projection. But they were coming anyway. 400 civilian vessels had armed themselves and joined up. Cargo haulers, mining ships, colony transports. Anything that could mount a weapon and make the jump. 16 colony defense fleets, stripped down to skeleton crews to free up personnel. The Galactic Council sent another message. Threats this time. Economic sanctions, revocation of trade rights, removal from the diplomatic registry. Admiral deleted it without reading past the first line. At the 40-hour mark, the first human ship encountered a patrol. The patrol ship ordered them to stand down. The human ship didn't even slow down. Warning shots were fired. The human ship fired back and the patrol ship became debris. At 43 hours, 3 outposts went dark. No distress calls, no survivors, just silence. The leadership finally understood. These weren't bluffs. These weren't negotiations. The humans were coming and they didn't care about consequences. In a panic, they contacted the Empire. "We need immediate assistance," the commander transmitted. "The humans are attacking our facilities." "We're sending a fleet to intercept," the admiral responded. "They're primitives with primitive ships. We'll remind them of their place." The 2 fleets met at the border of space. 40 cruisers formed a blockade line. The human fleet didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't even attempt to negotiate. They punched straight through. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. 8 cruisers were disabled, their weapon systems destroyed with surgical precision. The humans didn't try to capture them, didn't try to destroy them. They simply removed them as obstacles and kept moving. The admiral stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His ships had barely scratched the human formation. At the slave processing station where was being held, received an urgent message from his superiors. His hands shook as he read it. "Kill the human, destroy all evidence. We cannot afford this war." He looked toward the holding cells where his cargo waited. This was supposed to be an easy job, one more primitive to sell, one more payday. Now it might be the end of everything. He picked up his weapon and headed for the cells. Woke to the sound of someone crying. Her head throbbed and her arm ached where the alien had grabbed her. She was lying on a hard metal floor in a cell barely large enough to stand in. Dim blue lighting made everything look wrong. She sat up slowly, wincing. Through the bars she could see other cells, dozens of them, all holding different aliens. The crying was coming from a small, insect-like creature huddled in the corner of the cell across from hers. "Hey," whispered, "are you okay?" The creature looked up with multiple eyes. "No talking," it chittered, its translator barely working. "They punish talking." Looked around, no guards in sight. She pulled herself to her feet and checked the cell. Solid construction, electronic lock. She felt in her pockets. They'd taken everything except her clothes. "How long have you been here?" she asked the insect creature. 3 weeks, maybe 4, my name is. We're getting out of here." Made a sound like laughter but sadder. "No one gets out. We wait until they sell us. Then new masters, that's all." "Not this time," said with more confidence than she felt. Far above the station, Captain Bin's strike team approached a transport vessel. Intelligence had tracked it leaving a known slave depot. Her ship, the Thunder, locked weapons. "This is the Earth vessel Thunder," she broadcast. "Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded." The transport tried to run. Bin had expected that. A single missile took out their drive section without breaching the hull. Marines in combat armor crossed the gap between ships. The boarding was quick and brutal. The crew surrendered without much fight. In the cargo hold, the Marines found 40 aliens locked in cages. Different species, all terrified. "Secure the prisoners," Bin ordered. "Get them medical attention." As her medics worked, Bin personally interviewed each rescued alien through translators. "Where are the main processing stations? How many guards? What security systems?" Some knew nothing, but others had seen things, heard things, coordinates, names, facility layouts. Bin sent all of it back to intelligence officer. In his dark room, added the new data to his growing map. 17 facilities had become 23. He'd hacked into communication networks and was reading their panicked messages in real time. He saw the order to kill before it was even transmitted. He immediately flagged it and sent it to Admiral with the most likely facility locations. "She's probably at Station Gamma 4 or the facility," reported. "Those are their 2 main processing centers." "How long until our fleet arrives?" asked. 8 hours to Gamma 4, 16 to the. Split the fleet, hit both targets. The human armada divided. Half headed for Gamma 4 under Captain Bin's command. The other half, led by Admiral himself, set course for Prime. Back in the holding station, walked through the cell block with his weapon drawn. He'd sent his crew away. This was something he'd do himself. Fewer witnesses. He reached the cell and looked through the bars. The human female was sitting against the wall, eyes closed, asleep or unconscious. He raised his weapon. His hand hesitated. She was small, young. She'd fought well for a primitive. In another life, he might have respected that. But this was survival. He entered the unlock code. The cell door slid open, stepped inside. The human didn't move. He aimed at her head and started to squeeze the trigger. His eyes snapped open. She threw a handful of metal scraps directly at his face, flinched, and she was already moving. She'd been working on the ventilation grate for the past hour, using a piece of broken wire. The scraps were pieces from the grate. She dove between his legs and rolled out of the cell. Fired, but the shot went wide, hitting the wall. Was already at the control panel, smashing it with her fist. Sparks flew, and every cell door in the block opened. 40 terrified aliens looked out from their cells. "Run," shouted, "go." Some did, others cowered. Out and grabbed arm with small appendages. "You're insane." "Probably," agreed. "Can you climb?" "Yes." Then up, pointed at the damaged ventilation grate. "We're getting out of here." Was shouting into his communicator, calling for backup. Alarms began to blare throughout the station. Boosted into the vent, then pulled herself up. 6 other aliens followed. The ventilation system was tight and dark, but had spent half her life in ship. She led them through the maze of ducts, following the air flow. That would lead to the main circulation system, and that would lead to the station's engineering section. "Where are we going?" asked. "Communications," said. "If we can get a signal out, someone might hear it." "No one will come for us. We're just cargo." "Maybe for you," said. "But I'm human, and humans are crazy enough to come for one person." Behind them they could hear guards entering the vents, heavy footfalls, shouted commands. "Crawled faster." In space, Admiral's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Prime's system. Immediately, sensors lit up with targets. They had assembled their entire defense fleet. Over 200 ships formed a defensive wall between the humans and the planet. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from command," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." A reptilian face appeared on screen. "Human fleet, you are in violation of Galactic Treaty. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." "Where is our citizen?" asked calmly. "We do not negotiate with terrorists." "Wrong answer." Closed the channel and turned to his weapons officer. "All ships prepare to engage. Broadcasting on all frequencies. Return alive in the next 10 minutes or we start shooting. Your choice." The response was to fire first. Energy weapons and missiles streaked toward the human fleet. "So much for diplomacy," muttered. "All ships weapons free. Show them what humans do to slavers." The space above Prime erupted into battle. Human ships moved in coordinated patterns, covering each other with overlapping fields of fire. Their missiles came in swarms, overwhelming point defense systems, fired solid slugs at relativistic speeds. They had numbers, but humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Every ship captain had studied ancient naval battles, modern combat tactics, and had adapted them for space. They fought like wolves, packs working together to bring down larger prey. Cruisers exploded under focused fire. Their formation began to break. Inside the slave station, reached the engineering section. She opened a panel and found what she was looking for, the communication array controls. Her fingers flew over the alien interface. The symbols were different, but engineering was engineering. Power flow was universal. "I need you to watch the door." The small alien positioned itself at the entrance while worked. She rerouted power, boosted the signal, and opened a channel on every frequency she could access. "This is Human Citizen broadcasting from Holding Station. If anyone can hear this, I'm alive. There are others here. We're in the lower levels. Coordinates are." She read off the numbers from the control panel. In orbit, Lieutenant Myra picked up the signal on her assault ship. "Admiral, we've got her. She's alive and broadcasting coordinates." "All assault teams converge on that position," ordered. "Marines, get down there now." 8 assault ships broke from the main fleet and dove toward the planet, weathering defensive fire from surface installations. Burst into the engineering section just as finished her broadcast. His scales were scorched from crawling through damaged vents. His weapon was raised. "You should have stayed in your cell," he snarled. "You should have let me go," replied. He fired. She dove behind a console as energy blasts tore apart the equipment, scattered with the other freed aliens. Then the ceiling exploded. Human Marines in powered armor dropped through the breach, weapons ready, turned to fire at them. He didn't even get a shot off before a stun round took him down. Lieutenant Myra approached, who was covered in dust and bleeding from a dozen cuts. The Marine's helmet retracted. "That's me. We're here to take you home." Looked at the other aliens cowering in the corner. "What about them?" Myra smiled. "We're taking everyone. No one gets left behind." The assault ship climbed away from the slave station with 63 freed aliens aboard. Medical teams worked on the wounded while sat in the co-pilot seat, wrapped in a thermal blanket and watching the battle unfold above. It was terrible and beautiful at the same time. Human ships moved like dancers, flowing around enemy fire while delivering devastating strikes. Vessels exploded in silent blooms of light. Debris fields expanded where proud warships had been moments before. "Is it always like this?" she asked Lieutenant Myra. "Like what?" "This violent, this fast." Myra checked her tactical display. "Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. That's what kept us alive on Earth for millions of years." On the flagship, Admiral watched his tactical screen. The fleet was breaking. Half their ships were destroyed or disabled. The survivors were scattering. "Sir, command is hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put them through." The same reptilian commander appeared, but now his scales were pale with fear. Smoke filled his bridge behind him. "We surrender. Please stop the attack." "Where are the other slaves?" demanded. "What?" "You heard me. How many other beings are in your cages? Where are they?" The commander's eyes darted to something off-screen. We have facilities across 14 systems, approximately 12,000 individuals in holding. You have 24 hours to release every single one. We want proof of release, witnesses, documentation. If we find one alien still in chains after tomorrow, we come back and finish this. But the logistics, we can't possibly. Then I suggest you work fast. Cut the transmission. All ships maintain position. We're not leaving until this is done. On the surface of Prime, emergency crews worked frantically. The humans had been precise in their targeting, destroying military infrastructure while leaving civilian areas mostly untouched. But the message was clear. They could have leveled cities. They chose not to. That mercy made their threat even more terrifying. Across space, facility commanders received the same order: release the slaves, all of them, immediately. Some without question. Others hesitated until human ships appeared in orbit, weapons locked on their stations. Then they very quickly stood in the assault ship's cargo bay with the other freed aliens. Medical staff had treated minor injuries and provided food. Real food, not the paste they'd been fed in the cells. A human medic knelt beside with a scanner. "Does this hurt?" the medic asked, running the scanner over his damaged wing. "A little." "We can fix it. Might take a few treatments, but you'll fly again." His translator couldn't quite convey the emotion, but heard the catch in the small alien's voice. "Why are you helping us? We're not human." The medic looked surprised. "You were prisoners, that's enough." Another freed alien, a tall being with gray fur, approached. "I must ask, did you really broadcast your location knowing they would kill you for it?" Shrugged. "I needed to tell someone where we were." "But you risked execution." "I risked dying free instead of living in a cage. Seemed like a good trade." The gray alien made a gesture that might have been respect or confusion. "Your species is very strange." "You're not the first to say that." 12 hours later, the first batch of freed slaves arrived at the human fleet. Transports and shuttles came from every facility, carrying beings of dozens of species. All were given medical checks, food, and transportation to wherever they wanted to go. The Galactic Council watched this unfold with growing alarm. Emergency session after emergency session, but no conclusions. The humans had demonstrated they would go to war over a single citizen. They defeated a regional power in less than a day. And now they were dictating terms. "We must respond," one counselor insisted. "They've violated every diplomatic protocol." "How?" another asked. "Do we send ships? They just destroyed the fleet and forced them to back down." "Economic sanctions, then." "Who will enforce them? Who wants to be the next example?" The debate raged, but no consensus emerged. The galaxy had no framework for dealing with a species like this. On Earth, the news feeds showed rescue on repeat. Her face became famous. The image of her boarding the rescue shuttle, battered but unbroken, was everywhere. But so were the images of the other freed slaves. The elderly, the children, the injured. People saw what they had been doing for decades, what the Galactic Council had allowed, and they were angry. Protests formed outside alien embassies. Not violent ones, but the message was clear. Humanity was watching now. They wouldn't look away. At the 24-hour mark, the last transport arrived. 12,342 freed slaves. The number was precise because humans counted every single one. "That's all of them?" Admiral asked. Intelligence officer checked his intercepts. "All accounted for. They've shut down their entire operation." "Good," opened a channel to the, "Your people are free, all of them. If we ever hear of you taking slaves again, we won't be this gentle. Understood?" "Understood," the commander replied quickly. "One more thing," added. "We're leaving a monitoring satellite in orbit. It will watch you. If it goes dark for any reason, we'll assume you're guilty of something and come back. Have a nice day." The human fleet began its withdrawal, leaving the battered system behind. But true to its word, a small satellite remained in high orbit, its sensors watching everything. On the journey back to human space, finally had time to process everything that happened. She sat in the observation deck, watching stars streak past. Captain Bin found her there. "How are you holding up?" the captain asked. "I started a war." "No, you didn't. Slavers started a war the moment they touched you. You just gave us a reason to finish it." "Was I worth all this? The ships destroyed the people who died." Bin sat next to her. "You're asking the wrong question. It's not about worth. It's about what kind of species we want to be. Do we abandon our people when things get hard, or do we fight for them? Even if it's just one person. Especially if it's just one person. Because if we won't fight for one, why would we fight for 1,000 or 1,000,000? Bin stood. "You didn't start this, but you sure as hell gave us something to stand for." After the captain left, fluttered over on newly repaired wings. "May I sit?" "Sure." They watched the stars in silence for a while, then spoke. "I asked one of the human historians about your species. They told me stories about soldiers who walk into certain death to save one wounded friend, about ships that turn back into storms to rescue survivors, about entire wars fought to free people who weren't even the same nationality." "Sounds about right." "It's inefficient, illogical. You spend resources on individuals when logic says to cut losses." "Yeah, we're not great at logic." "No," agreed. "But I think I prefer your kind of madness to everyone else's logic." News of the defeat spread through the galaxy at the speed of light. In some places, it was met with outrage. Humans were called warmongers, barbarians, a danger to civilized space. But in other places, the response was different. On worlds where the strong preyed on the weak, where the Galactic Council turned a blind eye to suffering, the news was received with something like hope. On the planet, a mother held her child who had been taken by slavers and recently freed by humans. She looked up at the stars and whispered a prayer of thanks to the strange species who valued life so much they'd go to war for it. On the mining colony of Praxis, workers who'd been little better than slaves heard the story and started organizing. If humans could stand up to slavers, maybe they could stand up to the corporations that exploited them. On 100 worlds, in 1,000 cities, beings who'd felt powerless heard about a small human engineer who'd fought back, and a species who'd crossed the galaxy to save her. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had just announced what side they were on. Admiral received a private message from his alien merchant friend. "You've made a lot of enemies today, but you've also made friends, more than you know. The question is, what will you do with that?" Smiled and sent a reply. "We're going to change the rules, and anyone who doesn't like it can get in line behind the." The Galactic Council chambers were in chaos. Representatives from 400 species argued over each other, their translators creating a din of conflicting sounds. At the center of it all stood Ambassador, representing Earth. She was a small woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and calm eyes. She'd been a diplomat for 30 years, negotiating treaties and trade agreements. But nothing had prepared her for this. "Order," the head counselor demanded, its tentacles flashing in agitation. "We must have order." The noise gradually settled. The counselor turned its many eyes toward. "Ambassador, your species has committed acts of unprecedented aggression. You have destroyed vessels, invaded sovereign space, and dictated terms to a recognized civilization. How do you answer these charges?" Walk to the center of the chamber. Every alien eye followed her. The session was being broadcast across the galaxy. Whatever she said now would echo for generations. "You call it aggression," she began, her voice clear and steady. "We call it justice." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. For how long has the Galactic Council known about the slave trade? How many reports were filed? How many species begged for help? She pulled up a holographic display showing decades of complaints, all marked as deferred or under review. 83 years, continued. 83 years of documented slavery, and you did nothing. You gave them diplomatic immunity. You called it complex and regional politics. You told species to be patient, to work through channels, to respect the process. "Those are proper procedures," a counselor objected. "Those are excuses," shot back. 12,000 beings were in cages while you debated procedure. One of them was ours. "One being," another counselor exclaimed. "You risked interstellar war over one individual." "Yes," his voice was steel. "Because that one individual is a human being and we protect our own, all of them, every single one." She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes and eye stalks and photoreceptors. "You asked us to show restraint, to accept that sometimes individuals must be sacrificed for the greater good, to understand that one person doesn't matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics. But here's what you don't understand about humans. We've spent our entire history proving that philosophy wrong. We've toppled empires to free slaves. We've crossed oceans to bring home prisoners of war. We've walked into fire for people we've never met. It's not logical, it's not efficient, but it's who we are." A counselor from the Empire stood, its blue skin flushed with anger. "You speak of justice while threatening civilizations. Your fleet damaged our vessels without provocation." "Without provocation," turned to face the. "You formed a blockade to protect slavers. You fired the first shots. We responded proportionally. And notice, counselor, that your vessels were disabled, not destroyed. We could have killed your crews. We didn't. That's called restraint. You destroyed the fleet." "They fired first too, and they were protecting a slave operation. We gave them multiple chances to surrender." Pulled up tactical footage of the battle. "See here, human ships targeting weapon systems, engines, command centers, precision strikes. If we wanted to commit genocide, there would be a crater. Instead, their cities stand. Their people live. Their military is gone, but their civilization survives." The chamber fell quiet. The footage didn't lie. The human attack had been brutal but surgical. "You call us barbaric," continued, "but we could have done so much worse. We chose not to, and that choice matters." "Pretty words," a counselor hissed, "but you've still set a dangerous precedent. Any species could now claim their individual was wronged and launch attacks." "Good," said simply. The chamber erupted again, waited for silence. "Yes, good," she repeated. "Because maybe that will force you to actually do your jobs. Maybe if you know that species will fight for their people, you'll stop letting slavers operate with immunity. Maybe you'll stop dismissing individuals as irrelevant statistics." She pulled up more data. Since the battle at Prime, 47 species have contacted Earth. 47. They're asking for defense pacts, for trade agreements, for friendship. Do you know what they all have in common? No one answered. They're all species that the Council has failed. The weak, the preyed upon, the ones you told to be patient while they suffered. They're coming to us because we did what you wouldn't. We stood up for someone who couldn't fight back." An elderly counselor, one who'd been silent until now, spoke in a wheezing voice. "And what happens when the next crisis occurs? When another species demands action over a single citizen? Will you support them too?" "If they're in the right, yes," met the old counselor's gaze. "We don't claim to be perfect. We don't claim to know all the answers, but we know slavery is wrong. We know that abandoning people is wrong, and we're willing to fight for that." "Even if it means fighting us?" the head counselor asked quietly. The chamber held its breath. "We hope it doesn't come to that," said carefully. "But understand this clearly. Humanity will protect the helpless and punish the cruel. If that aligns with the Council's interests, wonderful. If not," she shrugged, "we'll do what we think is right regardless." "That's a declaration of rogue status," a counselor warned. "No, that's a declaration of principles. The Council is welcome to join us. We'd prefer that, actually. Working together would be better for everyone. But we won't compromise on protecting innocent lives just to maintain diplomatic convenience." Several counselors stood to leave in protest. Others remained, some looking thoughtful, others angry. The session was falling apart. The head counselor made one final attempt at control. "Ambassador, the Council will deliberate on these matters. In the meantime, we strongly urge humanity to stand down from further military actions." "We will defend ourselves and our allies," replied. "We will respond to threats, and we will answer calls for help from those who need it. Beyond that, we have no territorial ambitions. We're not trying to build an empire. We just want to make the galaxy a little safer for everyone." She gathered her materials and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the council erupted into argument. Outside, a cluster of aliens waited. Recognized some of them from the species who'd contacted Earth. A gray-furred being approached her. "Ambassador, that was remarkable." "Thank you, you're from correct." "Yes, we wanted you to know our people are grateful. My daughter was freed from because of your." Smiled, "How is she?" "Healing. Your people sent medical supplies and counselors. More than we expected or could afford." "That's what allies do." More aliens approached, all with similar stories. Children freed, loved ones returned, hope restored. On Earth, watched the broadcast of speech within Captain. The merchant vessel had returned to Earth for repairs and was staying with her parents while she recovered. "She's good," commented. "She's telling the truth," said. "That's different than being good at politics." Her communicator chimed. Another message. She'd received hundreds since the rescue. Most were from humans, but many were from aliens thanking her. Some were from beings who'd been freed, asking how she was doing. One message stood out. It was from, "I wanted to let you know I'm settling on one of your colony worlds. New, I think it's called. The humans there have been very welcoming. I'm going to learn engineering, like you. Maybe someday I can help someone the way you helped me. Thank you for showing me that being small doesn't mean being helpless. Your friend." Smiled and sent a reply. Weeks passed. The galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Some species cut diplomatic ties with humanity, calling them dangerous and unpredictable. Others quietly reached out, asking about those defense pacts. The Galactic Council issued formal sanctions against Earth, but they were toothless. Too many species now depended on human trade and protection. In a private meeting, Admiral sat across from Ambassador. Behind them was a map showing human territory and the locations of their new allies. "We've changed the game," said. "Question is, can we live with the consequences?" "We'll have to," replied. "We drew a line, no more slavery, no more turning away from injustice. That's going to make enemies. But also friends." "Also friends," she agreed. "Strange ones, but friends nonetheless." On a transport heading toward New, looked out at the stars and thought about the human who'd refused to stay in a cage. The galaxy was different now because of her. Not completely better, not completely fixed, but different. And maybe that was enough to start with. On a slaver ship in a distant system, a crew prepared to raid a primitive world. The captain pulled up the target data and froze. The planet had a human monitoring satellite in orbit, tiny thing. No weapons, just sensors. But the message was clear. This world was under human protection. The captain changed course without a word. Some risks weren't worth taking. In her apartment on Earth, looked at the data pad showing 47 messages from freed slaves, now scattered across dozens of worlds. They were building new lives. Some had families now. Others had found work. One had started a school. She thought about what Captain Ben had said. It wasn't about being worth it. It was about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. The galaxy had its answer now. Humans were the ones who came when you called, the ones who fought for people they didn't know, the ones who looked at a single person in a cage and said, "That's enough. This ends now." Some called it madness, others called it hope. Called it family, because in the end, that's what humans did. They expanded their definition of family until it included anyone who needed help, anyone who'd been wronged, anyone who'd been forgotten by the powerful and the comfortable. The galaxy would have to learn to live with that. And if it couldn't, well, humanity had demonstrated they were willing to teach the lesson as many times as necessary. Somewhere in deep space, a small alien child looked up at the stars and whispered a question to their parent. Is it true? Do humans really fight for everyone? The parent, who'd been freed from slavers by human marines, smiled. Yes, little one, they do, and the galaxy is better for it. The child thought about this and asked one more question. Can we be like them? Maybe, the parent said. Maybe we all can be. That's what they're showing us. That's the real change. Not the battles or the speeches, it's the example. That sometimes the right thing to do is the hard thing, and someone has to be brave enough to do it first. Above them, the stars shone bright, and somewhere among them, humans kept watch, protecting their ever-growing family. Because that's what they did. That's what made them human.